This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent. But this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
To pretend that the hardest part of this job is what happens on the street. The wreckage, the fires, the calls that keep you up at 2 a.m. But ask any veteran operator who's bled for this career and they'll tell you the real damage usually happens inside the four walls of the station. It's the poor leadership. It's the administrative betrayal. It's the bosses who manage through fear, hide behind rank, and treat the people doing the work like an inconvenience until the good ones just burn out and walk away. Today, you'll hear Jason and I sit down with a 25-year frontline veteran who decided to stop swallowing that poison and start fighting back. His name is JP, Deputy Fire Chief out of Southern New Hampshire and the voice behind the Passionate Leader. He's lived through the meat grinder of working under toxic leadership, survived the collapse of his own personal life, and built a platform dedicated to giving line officers the backbone to stand up, call out bad bosses, and actually protect their crews. Now here's the kicker. This isn't just a standard interview. This is part one of a massive two-part crossover event. You'll hear JP as he pulls up a chair at our table to break down the administrative war and the lie of the fire service legacy. Then for part two, you're going to head over to the Passionate Leader podcast where the tables flip and JP puts me in the hot seat. And he digs into my own story, and down the road, he does the same thing with Jason. We already recorded this episode, and I am telling you right now, we dropped the rank, we ripped off the mask, and didn't hold a single thing back. Clear your mind, turn up your volume, and welcome back to A Silent War Within. This is part one of our crossover with JP, the Passionate Leader.
Yeah, I'll confess, I just recently found you doing the prep for this show, and I'm already in love with what you're doing. Like your mission for developing better leaders and really just speaking into that administrative, I think you had a word for it. I have to go back and find it, but it's that kind of that administrative betrayal is really what I've become real passionate about. So without further ado, I want to welcome JP, the Passionate Leader, to the podcast. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah, we're glad we're here. So before you were the Passionate Leader, what was your life like? Was there a specific moment maybe that was in your early career that you realized that the way people lead just isn't working? Like what brought you to become the Passionate Leader?
Yeah. So I've always had kind of the knack to want to lead. When I was, I was not old enough to drive. So I must have been about 14 years old. I started as a fire explorer in a small town of Chester, Vermont, and just moved to town. And they had just started up a fire explorer's post, and they were looking for kids to fill certain leadership roles. And I remember asking the advice, it's a popularity contest, So a new kid to the school wanted, trying to make friends. I was still kind of shy at that time. I very much so have flipped from, being an introvert in high school and in junior high to now being far more of an extrovert. So long story short, they come in there like, we're looking for, people to be, nominated as captain of the post. And that was kind of like the top dog position of the explorer's post. It really didn't equate to anything other than you were sort of if the advisor needed to reach out, hey, you call, so-and-so, and just, it started the kind of the path of leadership. So I always really found myself into that. I nominated myself because nobody else knew who the hell I was. And it wasn't until nominated and was actually, given the position. And it wasn't until I turned, it was a couple of years ago at my mentor, my absolute fire service giant's retirement party from the fire service, because he was the lead advisor. He goes, do you ever find out why, or did I ever tell you why we gave you that position? And he, I'm like, no, I never really gave much thought. And he goes, because you were the only kid that had the nuts big enough to nominate yourself and the courage to actually to lead. And I've always really liked the leadership aspect of the world, because it's the being the steward for other people, helping other people become the best version of themselves, and realizing that, my absolute top floor needs to be the next person who takes after me's basement level floor. And then they just keep taking over and it just keeps building on. And where I really saw the need for the Passionate Leader platform came probably it was probably a few years ago. So I've had the Facebook page out for a while, really didn't do much with it. It was kind of fun because I'd get some guys that are in the firehouse would share my posts with me, not knowing who I was for a little bit. It was more of a game for me at the time, but it was born out of, I worked underneath America's Worst Fire Chief. I remember there was a moment in time when I, as a lieutenant, had reached out to our local dispatch office because they had a dispatcher who was just they were struggling really, really hard and couldn't really get things. We were delayed getting called out to structure fires, missed on retones, forgotten on CPR calls and things like that. So I finally, from a lieutenant to the supervisor level at the dispatch office, I just wrote a letter. It's like, hey, I've just noticed these. For me, I saw it as a line officer thing. Hey, I'm seeing this, it might be worth reaching out to, this individual, kind of talking them through it. And what ended up happening was that supervisor felt that the best person to bring it to was the absolute top dog of the dispatch office. And lo and behold, that supervisor went to my chief. The chief reamed me a new backside, it reminded me that I was just a lowly peon lieutenant. It made me feel, about an inch tall. And really, that was the MO for that particular fire chief. And at that point, it was that was the precipice of me realizing, okay, we have to do something better in the fire service. We need to do better. And so I launched a Facebook platform, did a little bit here and there, wasn't really as involved with it as I am now. And, as that individual retired and I got a little bit more autonomy and more, administrative fortitude and knowledge, I, launched a Passionate Leader because there's a lot of really good firefighters that we're losing in the fire service because of really, really poor leadership. People that just are either in positions by way of a good old boys club, or it's nobody else wants to do it or anything like that. So it's the push for the whole Passionate Leader platform is just to try to give people that voice, give them a little bit of, encouragement from behind the scenes, and maybe give them, that fortitude and the cojones, so to speak, to maybe stand up for themselves, give them that voice, so to speak, that they otherwise may not have, or to understand. Because sometimes people, if you're held down by a leader, sometimes you feel like you're exiled, you're an island all by yourself, and you think that you're the only one suffering like this. But I mean, let's be real, guys. We all know, and we can certainly attest to it. The fire service, it's all the same circus. It's just different monkeys. It's just a matter of where you're, where the circus tent is set up. So that was where I launched the Passionate Leader.
That's awesome. So take one step back. I should ask this question first. Tell me about your fire service career. What role are you serving in the career in the service now? How long have you been there?
All right. So I've been a student of the craft since 2001. So I got 25 years in. I do count some of my Explorer years. And I do that, my disclaimer to the ones that, want to say, well, they don't count is, unbeknownst to me, we were actually doing things at, the ripe old age of 14 and 15 that we probably shouldn't have been doing as minors. We were cutting people out of cars. We were not going inside burning buildings. It was. And it wasn't, again, back until a conversation with my mentor, I didn't realize that our entire Explorer post actually worked a fatal MVC, and we were the only first responders on site. There were no firefighters on site. So I didn't even, it ran so smooth. I didn't even know that. And I was one of the participants, in that event. So right now I'm a deputy fire chief. I handle fire inspections, life safety stuff for a really small town in Southern New Hampshire, about 45 minutes northwest of the greater Boston area. Love what I do. Degree-wise, I have my bachelor's in fire administration and working on my master's. I was probably one of the coolest things was last year I was listed as the Columbia Southern University's Outstanding Fire Service Professional of the Year for 2025. That was kind of an honor. They called me out of the blue and they're like, yeah, somebody's nominated you. And I'm like, oh, like, what is this? And I'm thinking like it's, one of like 500 people get it. I was the one and only recipient of it. So that was pretty neat. Somebody through the platform apparently must have just reached out to Columbia Southern. I was like, hey man, this guy's doing good stuff. What do I ever plan on doing with it? Nothing. It's actually behind me right up there it's that piece of glass behind me. That's cool. But it's honestly the biggest proud thing that I am is a father of two and a husband. So but that's where I'm at. I hope to get another 15 years into the fire service before I retire and do actual, civilian things like rest, sleep on, on the weekends and things like that.
I love it. So thanks for sharing that. That gives our listeners a lot of perspective on what kind of experience you have stepping into this role. I imagine when you first launched the Passionate Leader, that you had a lot of pushback as you started talking about leading with, heart and passion. We've all seen it. We've all seen transactional leadership versus relational leadership. Talk to us about that pushback. Because you and I, so you started in 2001. I started right before you. I started in 98 career.
Okay.
With about 3 years of volunteer service before that I count for some of the same reasons. Definitely wasn't that young though. That's amazing. So with that level of experience, that comes with the old school mentality a lot of times that still exists, I think. And I'm curious what kind of pushback and resistance you felt as you started stepping out in your own leadership style and correcting leadership and pointing out poor leadership and how you handled that resistance.
Yeah. So it was immediate. Actually, the pushback, it was immediate, but it was never, immediately known to me. So I work underneath an amazing fire chief. Her and I have been in the department here in town since 2007 when I moved to town. She's got her and I have the same amount of years of service, but she's all exclusively with our agency. We are run by a board of wards. It's very similar to a board of commissioners or whatever the case is. It's an outdated, my opinion, it's an outdated process. Long story short, my initial early videos, and a lot of them are still, we don't sugarcoat anything. I'm a big guy, so if I sugarcoat everything, I'm gonna eat it and I'll be fat. So I cut right to the chase, and it's really brash. People don't like that. Long story short is the wards happen to they do the kind of watch behind the shadow watching stuff. They don't interact, they don't share, they don't, whatever the case is, they don't block, because if they block, then they can't see what I'm saying. Nothing I've ever done, and I challenge anybody to pay attention to any of my videos, is none of the videos intentionally call anybody out. It's purposeful that I don't put specific agencies, people, because it's degrading. It doesn't provide any value to what we're trying to get at. And I'm all about attacking characteristics, but not the character, if that makes sense.
It does.
And it boiled down to, and I didn't even know there was a problem until the chief came in. She goes, she referred to me as the passionate disruptor. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So in one of their monthly meetings, it was literally in a non-public, they're like, JP's talking about us. You need to get him to stop. And her answer to that was, one, what did he say that explicitly says it was about you? And two, I'm pretty sure that there are certain laws that protect him from saying things and you infringing upon those rights. So of course I was like, well, what video were you talking about? And all it was poor. It was one of my many videos about poor leadership traits. And I looked at her and I said, I'm pretty sure they're just mad because they think I'm talking about them and they see what I'm talking about as a reflection. I am about 90% of the stuff that I get is either by watching other people's videos. It's not, there are some lived experiences, yes, but most of the material, it comes to me, so, and it's one of those things that was the immediate pushback I got from our internal department. Pushback from the naysayers out in the World Wide Web and stuff. I mean, it was always entertaining when I would bring up, I always call back a lot of times to one video that I made, and it was questioning, should there be an age restriction in the fire service? Well, that's like attacking Social Security. I mean, there's definitely, there's some that are like, yes, absolutely. Others that are like, dude, you can't, if you do that, you'd be the death of the volunteer fire service, and so on and so forth. And it was always entertaining because at that time I was 75 to 100 pounds heavier. So it's the first thing people say that have never an argument of, I don't agree with what you have to say. It was always how about a weight restriction, right? Or something like, or a fitness restriction. And I'm like, it's always entertaining because it's low hanging fruit. I've brought in concepts, and it's everything that we do is just about conversation. It's all about having as much of an oxymoron as it is a harmonious discord of, here's my side, here's your side, and we're going to talk, and we're going to realize at the end of the day, we're both going to be husbands, fathers, brothers, friends when it's all said and done, because that's how you make a change. It's people, we live in such a society where people feel they have to be right or the last one heard, that we're going into this phase of people almost literally fight to the bloody death just to either have the last word or feel like their viewpoint was actually correct. And you can have two correct viewpoints and be totally opposing. So that's the main meat and potatoes. The more recent one was I made a video about a union dispute in Mass, the state just south of us. And I get a kick out of it because we're not a union shop. We don't have a union. But I always kind of laugh when it's always the same boilerplate. Hey, brethren, please don't put in for this fire chief's job. We have a really good in-house guy. Me not being a union guy, I'm like, dude, I don't care if you got a good. It almost makes me want to apply for it just to be that guy, because it's if and I will die on this hill. If your in-house candidate is good enough, then let them stand the litmus test. And if they really are, and the hiring board is there for the right reasons, and yes, cities can put in their ringers or whatever the case is. I get that, but unfortunately, life isn't fair, and trying to sway the way one way or the other isn't going to work. And honestly, if you ask your fellow union brothers to not apply for it, you run the gamut of nobody applying for it other than somebody from way out of state, or worse, you do get your in-house guy and the city's like, we still don't like it. We're going to keep putting it out until somebody finally applies for it. So what are you really getting out of it? I guess it gets the big thing. So that's really the pushback that I get is, I got some, I think one of the comments I got on the video was, you should really be quiet while the adults are talking. And what's fun with that is they give me so much material, so I can video reply back to that. And it was hey, if you want to educate me on how I'm not talking like an adult, hit me up on the 8 o'clock Sunday night for our lives, and let's have a conversation. I saved a seat for the person at the table. I'm very, very surprised that they never actually happen to show up to show their viewpoint. Likely because it could be somebody that just shadow follows me to try to troll. You know what? That's everything that I get's a form of flattery, so I'll take it. I'm flattered by the fact that people need to shadow hide and shadow comment on me sometimes.
We talked about that earlier today. Like, it does two things. One, from a social media perspective, even that negative engagement is engagement that drives more people to the page. So to me, it's like, hey man, bring it on. And the reality is 99% of the naysayers on social media are only saying what they're comfortable saying behind the comfort of a screen and a keyboard.
Yes.
And the
keyboard fortitude
of exactly. And there's 99% of the time face to face. And like you just said, they're not going to come on the show because they know I don't have the fortitude and the cojones. I love that word.
Yeah.
That they don't have the cojones to stand up and put their put their feet where their mouth was.
Yeah. And it, I can, what's funny too is I don't argue for the sake of arguing. And, if I agree with somebody, I'm not going to be like, all right, how can I find a way to disagree with them just for shits and giggles and have, but what is fun is I will be like, I don't agree with that. Help me understand your viewpoint. And it's, I can't tell you how many people who are, rubbing elbows with bigger names in the circuit, so to speak, that are just like, if you have, even the slightest differing viewpoint, they block you. They do whatever they can to shut you. And it's like, nothing grows in echo chambers, and it's just, it's unfortunate because I've grown so many amazing followers, but I don't even call them followers. They're friends, people that chat on a regular day-to-day basis with me. And it's just because somebody one time, he's like, hey, I really like the fact that you don't back down from that confrontation. You invite open conversation, and it's not hard. It's just, okay, Jason, I don't agree with what you have to say, or I'm not fully understanding that. Explain it more to me, or whatever the case is. And again, it could end up where, you're like, man, fire trucks need to be hot pink and have 100-gallon-a-minute pumps, and that's all that we need. And I'm like, internally, I'm like, man, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But it's like, all right, so walk me through your thought process, or whatever the case is. And that's what it boils down to is, like I said, it's the harmonious discord that we so desperately need, not only in the fire service, but let's be very real, in our social lives as well, because people just are either one, afraid of confrontation, or two, feel that they just have to like it's waging a war against society to be correct in an argument. And it's like, it doesn't have to be an argument, it's a conversation.
Mhm.
It's just crazy. It's one of those things. It just blows my mind.
It could be a conversation until you start talking about yellow fire trucks, and then it's an argument. Let's be real, right?
And amen.
Well, it really reminds me of just a little backstory. For a short time in like 2013 or 2012, I think it was 13, I was convinced I was going to make this ton of money. And I did make good money to take a break from EMS and go over the road truck driving. So I did that. And it reminds me so much. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this term, but out on the road, there's radio Rambos. So they're these guys that ride up and down the road, and they're just doing their job, right? You don't think anything about it. And you pass one of them because maybe your truck goes faster than theirs. The governors are set differently, whatever. And they jump on the microphone of the CB and they're like, I will kick your, all this stuff. And they're talking this big game. And the way that I found to shut them up is like, okay, well, I'll meet you at the next truck stop. Nobody ever stopped.
Yeah.
Nobody ever stopped. Nobody. So it really reminds, that conversation we had earlier today, Jason and I with another guest, was a lot of that same kind of mentality. Like you can't walk the walk, but you talk the talk. And it's disheartening. At the same time, something else that once I got into leadership that I want you to elaborate on a little bit, that I found maybe not disheartening, but very stressing to me, is that my team and the people that I led and still lead really felt like I was their energy source. I was the battery, right? And you kind of have to be this high energy type of person to kind of work through some of that. So what do you do when kind of the people that you lead have drained your energy? How do you fill your cup back up? How do you realize that it's even getting empty?
So I have no magic answer to that, but I can tell you what I've done and tried, and for the most part has worked. So a lot of it for me is complete disconnection from the fire service, my active part of the fire service. Oddly and sickly enough, through the podcast and the platform, I'm still generally fire service based, but it's grounding for me. I'm able to kind of just, be myself, because sometimes around the firehouse, especially being a deputy, you have to really, you can be mostly your authentic person, but you can't always be. I'll give a story about that in a second. But for the most part, it's take a break. I did learn. So I am a one-time survivor of divorce. I do not plan on ever doing it again because I've since remarried. But I've learned the hard way that I gave way more to the fire service in the early part of my career than I did to my family, and it's cost me dearly. Do I think that my first marriage would have been successful had I not? I don't. We were two very, incompatible people, but it definitely contributed to a major divide. And I have a very, very hard and fast rule that when 4 o'clock comes, because I'm right now lucky enough to have administrative hours, so I'm Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. When 4 o'clock hits, if that office door ain't hitting me in the backside, I must be absolutely sickly because something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, I even went on a pretty decent hiatus to any, evening or nighttime calls. And it was just sometimes you need that break and you have to kind of step away. And it's tough to be, the energetic guy. One of the hardest lessons that I learned moving from a captain to a deputy fire chief was there's a level of buddy to boss when you go from firefighter to lieutenant, but there's the captain to the administrative side to where I've learned really hard was, I think it was my first call as a deputy. I was just officer on the first due truck because we happen to have a couple of chiefs on during the day. And we had an alarm activation in a residential house. And I told a new firefighter, I'm like, hey, we got to go and take every single one of these, smoke detectors down and then put them back up one by one to see which one is actually pissing the system off. And he looked at me and is like, JP, I can't tell whether you're being serious right now or whether you're joking. And because I joke a lot. I am if I go a day without laughing, I'm having a really, really bad day, because that is my potion for staying alive is making people laugh, making myself laugh. And as soon as Kevin said that, I'm like, man, shit, I can't be the funny, laughy guy like I used to be. So mind you, same call, we use the homeowner's ladder to get up to some of the higher, detectors. I go downstairs into the basement and I walk back upstairs to get back into the house, out of the house to head out to the truck so we can go home. And Meg, who's our now chief, she had just moved up to captain at that point. And I'm like, we're locked down here. And she looks at me and she goes, stop screwing around. And I'm like, no, like, we literally are locked down here. So she goes to walk past me. And mind you, we're in, basement. It's like an L-shaped basement stair. I don't know why they had their basement doors locked. I never asked questions. It was weird. But anyway, so she knew I was being serious as soon as I keyed the mic and I was, I radioed into the engine. I was like, you want to send somebody to the basement door to let the captain and I out, please? And of course she's like, oh, you really were serious. And so it was those two at the same call. I'm like, yeah, I guess I really just can't be that same, happy-go-lucky laugh all the time. You got to have some serious moments. But yeah, for me, man, I love making people laugh. I love laughing myself. I take very little in life seriously, and that is probably a weakness of mine, but that is also what honestly keeps me grounded. And when, those really, really tough days where the energy is just absolutely gone, it might just be, honestly, I sit back and pager goes off. I'm not, I'm not going. If I get a notification on the phone, I'm unavailable for the day. And we all go through our funks, burnout is legit. And, like I said, I just recently kind of started going back to the afternoon calls and things like that. Cause it's just, we have some newer guys. They expect, some veteran, leadership presence there. And truthfully, being around new guys also energizes me just equally as much too. So that's probably my go-to, honestly.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something that's really important to bring up. And we've talked about it numerous times on the show, but I never think it gets talked about enough. Even if we were to hit on it every single show, it's still not enough. Public servants, whether you think of us as that or whether you prefer first responders, but very typically we become very obsessive about our jobs, right? We turn our jobs into our whole identity.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many times. Hey, and for years, the same with my first marriage, it was Kevin the EMT, Kevin the paramedic. That was all I was. If that title wouldn't attach to my name, I didn't know who I was. And you really hit on a very valid point when you said that, like, you have to learn how to pull away. It's very important that you know how to unplug. So when you get to that point where you have to unplug, or maybe you're struggling with something that you've seen or heard, or maybe you're going through a personal life tragedy, we all deal with things throughout our lives and we all stay pretty busy. Do you feel like there is maybe an extra pressure to now be the passionate leader because you're known for that?
Ooh, that's a damn good question. Not all the time. I mean, there are some days where, like, I'll use this holiday weekend, for example. I just went and bought a $370 or $80, gimbal camera or whatever the case is to help make, better content. And I have done nothing with it. And, this weekend I'm like, I really should go make videos, but it was just kind of like, I don't know what to talk about today. So I just kind of let well enough alone. And, when I first started, it was, all right, JP's got to get a post, because I cared more at the time about followers. That was a metric for me that was really, really artificially important. And I'm like, all right, so if I do this, and I study like algorithm, science as far as, okay, release at this time and another one at this. And before I knew it, I was like, it became more of a freaking job than it did actually like a fun hobby or just a quest. And I'm like, I don't want to say I took a step back, but it was definitely, okay, so I'm not going to push content, because if I can't find anything that's really pressing or on my mind, it's not going to be authentic anyways. And the important stuff for me is, authenticity. And, and a really good friend, Jeremy, him and I have, become really good friends through social media and platforms like that. He's really pushed hard, and really helped me understand that followers really don't, it is a metric inside of itself. I get, I have 50 people in the Sunday Night Live and I'm like, oh my God, are they a follower? And it's like, after a while, you're like, you have so many even at like 3,900 people, for me, I'm like, that's a lot of people for me to try to keep track of. And there's no way that I really can of, are they a follower? Because I believe that everyone who does follow the page deserves the level of brotherhood love that I give to somebody who is, could be a blood brother to me. And it's hard to do when you have so many people, and the bigger that you get, it's like, it's people get lost in the willy wags, and it's not worth it. So yeah, I mean, for me, it definitely was. Burnout is a very strong word, so I don't think that was the actual case, but it was, I was fighting to try to keep pushing. And then it was every so often I will use my favorite therapist, ChatGPT, would help me through some things. And it was like, oh yeah, if you post at 6 in the morning, at 9 in the morning, at 11 in the morning, right before lunch. And I'm like, this is like 12 videos a day. I don't have 12 videos of content. So I'm like, you know what? It is what it is. In however everything grows organically, that's how it's going to grow. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I know that there are a lot of people out there that, and I don't fault people when I say this, but a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on having that verified, badge on their on their meta stuff. And people can, it's a pay to play thing. It's no longer how many people you get, you can actually earn it. You can earn it for free still, but it's some ridiculous parameters. A lot of people are just paying for that now. And I'm like, I could, but I mean, for like $14 a week, I think, I'm like, for what? So people think that, that I'm a little bit better because I have a blue badge next to my name. I'm all set with that. Now, to that disclaimer, I will say that I don't think that people who do that are bad people. It's just, that is not my cup of tea. I choose to be organic growth. If it takes me 100 years to get 1,000 more followers, then it'll take me 100 years, because I care about where I get, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, it's the random people that reach out that, man, I really love what you're doing. I saw this clip. There is nothing that it is the closest equation I can give that in life is a proud husband or dad moment. It's oh my God, this individual is like, hey, I just watched your video. It really resonated with me. I'm going through this. How would you do that? And that's how in the only way that you can actually quantify whether something really is actually making a difference.
It's the starfish.
And
it's the starfish story. It's the kid walking on the beach, and he's throwing starfish into the ocean. And the old man walks up and says, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm saving the starfish." And thousands of starfish on the beach, and the old man's like, "You're never going to save all these starfish." He bends down, picks up one, throws it in the ocean, and he goes, "Well, it mattered for that one. I saved that one." Right?
Exactly.
It's the same concept.
Oh,
yeah,
100%. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's what's funny is, guys are humbling, but it's also we do a spinning wheel of death on the Sunday night lives that is just like hot topic stuff, just conversational generators. And people will reach out like, Chief, I have to pick your brain. I'm like, bro, it's JP. Like, I'm just even in the office. I mean, if you want to call me Chief on the fire ground, okay, I get it. There's a hierarchy, but outside of that, like, if I'm not wearing my gear and we're not fighting a building fire or actively on an emergency scene, I'm no different than you. I just have different responsibilities, and I happen to be a little higher on, the hierarchy chain, but that's it. I'm going to go in the same size earner box that everybody else is. And it's the title that really matters the most to me is husband, father,
absolutely,
brother and son. And that's it. And friend, but Chief, don't really care. Now, the question that I have that's on the hot wheel that I haven't given, and so if those that might listen to this, if they get to it before it comes, if this comes out before we spin the wheel and it lands, is the thought process of people like myself who are, humble about that. It's more of a rhetorical, but are we actually degrading the prestige and respect of that position? And I would surmise that we might actually be doing that. So that's kind of the hot button topics that we throw on the wheel sometimes, because I've thrown some dumb ones out there, again, like colors of fire trucks, certain age in the fires, like the ones where I don't even agree with. It's just like, let's have a conversation and see where this thing really goes.
Yeah. And I think to that point, to that question, like, to me, like you said, it's a balance. Hey, if you and I are just having a one-on-one conversation, it's Jason, or it's JP, if we're standing, if I'm wearing the badge shirt and we're out in the public, okay, maybe it's Chief then. If you want to send an official email, it's probably, probably should be Chief then.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it degrades the title or the rank. I think that just because I think relational leadership supersedes that.
I like that.
I think knowing your people and allowing your people to know you supersedes whatever the rank might be.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did when I got my leadership position. My first, I don't know, probably 2 months. So we had gotten a new, large director in our organization. It's a director position, but it's similar to a chief. And, he came in and said, hey, you have to make a 90-day plan for me of what you're going to do with your new position. Cause I was, I transitioned all the way up the ranks from paramedic to dispatcher to supervisor to, all the things. And he said, make a 90-day plan. And the first part of my 90-day plan, I spent the first month or two going out, having one-on-ones with people. I wanted to know who your kids are, what they're involved in. Like, I want to be able to walk into a room and go, how's little Johnny? I mean, that's obviously, I don't have any Johnnies, but I wanted that personal leadership side of it. I think that is important. And I'd much rather work for someone that is a relational leader versus somebody who wants me to call them Chief Davis every day.
Yeah, right.
It feels very impersonal. So I don't think you're demising that position. Now, some days would I love for everybody to call me, on those days where I'm not in a great mood and I want everybody to respect me and show me love and do all the right things. Of course, I'd love to be called Manager Kevin every time somebody walks in my office.
Right.
But that serves no purpose to the bigger picture.
Right. No, it's true.
And I would argue that it hinders vulnerability and authenticity. Like if
100%.
we want,
if
we want our people to be vulnerable with this, and we're a mental health podcast, right? So let's talk mental health for a minute. If I want the people that I'm leading to be vulnerable and share with me that they're struggling, chief or captain is not going to always cut it, right?
That's a good
Sometimes
point.
It needs to be. Let's get down on their level. I'm using air quotes, but let's get down on their level in that sense of not even get down on their level. Let's break down the levels. Like, right, there is no level.
Let's eliminate
like
them.
we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same. We're all in the thick of it. And if I want you to be vulnerable with me and tell me when you're struggling and open up and say, "Hey, I'm not okay," then the titles have to go away.
Amen. No, that's a really good point. Because people don't. They're far more willing to talk to a peer and versus a leader. So if you can remove that leader break or stigma, or whatever you want to call it, then we're just peers at that point. 100%.
Yeah. So talking about vulnerability and emotion, like we've all seen and experienced that high emotion leader on a fire ground or in the back of an ambulance or in a hospital setting, whatever it is. They can't seem to control their emotions. Where's the balance between leading with heart? Because heart is emotion. Like you can't lead with heart and passion and not have some emotion attached to that. So where's the fine line between leading with heart and having some emotion, but still remaining that calm, cool, collected individual that people know? Like when you give a size up, people are like, okay, he's got this under control. Like he's got six houses burning and people hanging out the windows, but he sounds pretty calm, man. This is going to go okay. Versus, oh my goodness, this guy is losing his stuff. He's got 6 houses burning and this is going to go bad, right? Yeah. So what's the balance?
So honestly, I think the balance comes with time and experience on the job. There really is no, I have seen chiefs with 40 years of service and you can tell when the chief has orange in front of him and when they don't have orange in front of them. And generally the volume and velocity of how orange it is in front of them. So for me, it was, when I was a young officer, I stepped on a lot of toes inadvertently and learning experiences. So for me, it took a long time to really break down where that fine line was and I'm really fortunate to have I have a co-deputy that he's Richard. It's going to be a sad day when he retires. He just retired from the FAA full time. So he's 65, I think now. I can't remember how exactly old he is. He's about 20-ish years older than I am, if not a little more. But it's great because I will run something by him and he's like, is that really the best way to go about doing it? And as soon as he says it, I'm like, nope, I know that's not. So I finally, for once in my life, we have per diem shifts during the day at the firehouse. So he's doing a shift. So he's in my office doing some things and he comes in and he's, we just went through that, the heat dome, I think that just came through the country. So he is, soaked in sweat, hot, not only, literally hot, but also hot under the collar. He goes, I just checked all of our trucks, and of the 21 packs, 10 of them either had lower air than they should, something was wrong with them. He goes, I'm shooting an email to the lieutenants to tell them to get in here and take care of it. So I let him kind of go get some water, go pee, have a little break. And he sits down and he's just pecking away at his keyboard. And I kind of turn my chair and I'm like, is this really the best time to send that email? And he turns his chair, looks at me and he goes, no, probably not. So honestly, that fine line is it comes with experience, and it really does. For those that are younger and really full of youth and exuberance, it's learning and really having that take a breath. No matter how big the fire is, I assure you it's going to go out. Boston back in 1872 burned 65 acres that are now the part of the booming metropolis. But it finally stopped. 60 some odd acres burned down. Same thing in Chicago the year before. Fires eventually do burn out. So take that 1 second to kind of collect yourself, collect your thought. And if you can, run through the DIMWIT process, which I love when it comes to radio transmissions. DIMWIT, DIMWIT. Doesn't matter what I transmit. If it doesn't matter what you transmit, get your grubby mitts off your mic and go do something productive on the fire ground. If it does matter, just make it clear and concise. You don't need to yell because, again, yelling at people on the fire ground, it just gets everybody amped up. And I equate it to, a town next to us, a beautiful slice of podunk. They had a multi-acre brush fire, and command was so boring on the air, like literally just boring. We're on the way with 3 units from our house, and I was the officer, and the others we're all getting ready. The guys are like, "What have we got, JP?" And I'm like, "Listen, I don't think they got it. We're probably going to get turned around, guys. So just hang tight. When we get there, if they need us to mop up, we can." Unbeknownst to me, up and over the ridge from where this individual was set up at the command post, they had trees that were actually starting to crown. Big fire, but he was so boring on the radio that we came in almost a little too boring, so to speak. But it was great because we pulled up and I was like, what do you need? He's like, yeah, let's go out, meet up with so and so and start cutting a fire line. And we crawl, crest over the knoll, and I'm like, holy damn, like this thing is actually like really ripping, and it's ripping. So it's for those that want to, everybody has passion. I really am a firm believer that everybody, when they first join the fire service, they have passion. They want to do good. They are full of, nobody joins to be a stick in the mud, and that is a learned trait through poor leadership, so it's take your time, take a breath. If you are in a leadership role, just understand that let's take it outside of the fire ground. You're dealing with an internal fire, aside from an external actual building fire. Take your time, take a breath. Get everybody's side of the stories. Rome was not built in a day. Whatever situation is occurring to cause this problem did not occur overnight. So it's going to take a little time to unbugger things up. We're still going through leadership transition in our department, and there's a lot of bad stuff that happened, and ill intent that started to happen, and it's going to take time to undo all of that stuff. So it's just take a breath. Understand that, as dumb and cliche as this is, it really is, it's our emergency to mitigate, but we did not cause this emergency. Our job is to figure out how to mitigate it, and being calm is the best way to figure out how to mitigate it. So it's just, that's really the cut and balance. But honestly, for me, it was cutting my teeth and, time in leadership roles. Cause man, we have a saying around the firehouse: the toes you step on today could be connected to the ass you must kiss tomorrow. I have learned that the very hard way in multiple occasions.
That is true.
And I 100% feel that we're all going to make mistakes as leaders. Ain't nobody perfect, but it's having the humility to tell the world, I messed that one up, and things like that. I remember going up, I'm down, when I was a brand new lieutenant, we had an older lieutenant, and he was the kind of guy that was like, hey, the sooner we get this training done tonight, the sooner we can get home. And now I'm 22, just made lieutenant. I'm going to set the world on fire. I'm going to be the next best lieutenant the world's ever seen. And at an officers meeting, I call him out for it, and I go up one side and down the other, and he gets up and he walks out, and immediately I'm like, yes, I just ridded this firehouse of one problem. Let's get on to the next one. And it wasn't until our training officer, he pulled me aside and he did the same thing to me. And he goes, listen, I agree what you said, but I left with a couple of different new backside orifices because he was not wrong. I messed up. I had to, and at the next officers meeting, I ate some crow. I had to lick some wounds. I apologized. And, that lieutenant's now he's since retired, passed. He's out, he left us a while back, rest his soul. But, him and I became closer because we had that conversation. I didn't know that he was going through some stuff at home. He was, again, too much to the fire service. There was the family drama. So his thought was, the sooner that I can get home, the sooner my wife will get off my ass. As a 22-year-old kid, you don't see those things. You can't see the forest through the trees sometimes. And just everybody out there, just take a breath. Yes, fire does move fast and we have to move with purpose, but just take a damn breath and realize that it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. The fire will eventually go out.
I literally laughed so hard at that story while you were telling it because I had one of my managers show up on scene one night for this 4-car MVA. I mean, it was bad. I mean, it had a lot of stuff going on. It was busy. And I said, hey, man, what are you doing here? He said, well, I heard you on the radio and thought something was on fire or burning down or the world was ending because I had just, as a young 20-year-old, as a new EMT, I was telling everything about the scene and was just hyped up.
Sure.
And he showed up and I got ragged for, I cannot tell you how long. Stay off the radio. Don't give Kev a radio, the whole thing. So
the dimwit, I had never heard the dimwit acronym before. I'm going to pull that.
I learned, man.
That.
Do it. Yeah. Cause I use it when we teach radio communications to our new members. And even to this, I learned that back, when I took in 2007, when I took Firefighter 1, one of the instructors of the academy brought that up. And I'm like, it's stuck with me since even to this day. Christ, we just had a motor vehicle accident about an hour before we started recording. And every time I grab that mic, man, immediately I'm like, dimwit. Yes, it does matter what it is. And it's one of those things. And
I love it.
There are some people who, I'm like, all right, give me the cliff notes, babe. I don't need to know. Or, some people they feel they need to talk. I'll use water supply as an example. They're like, hey, I just emptied my water tank. I'm on my way to the fill site. Okay, I'm off at the fill site. They're filling me up. Okay, and I'm like, I don't care. Tell me if you break down. That's a problem. That's a logistical problem.
Yeah, it reminds me of the trend going around on social media there for a while where the line level guys would call the battalion chief or the deputy chief or the fire chief and be like, hey, chief, I just want to let you know, I checked my air pack. I filled it up. I topped it off. And he's like, what? You know what I mean? Just
what
to drive
are you
me
doing this for?
But it's it's just literally, that's kind of what I've sitting there thinking of. Part-time dispatch 911 for 15 years. And so without knowing the dimwit acronym, I adopted that same mentality. Like, cause on the other side of the radio, I'm like, dude, you sound like an idiot. Calm down. Like, you're a 30-year seasoned veteran of the fire service who sounds like he hasn't seen fire before. And so fortunately, I was able, like, for me, stepping into the front seat of the truck and actually being responsible for talking on the radio for the fire department. It was like, okay, let's just calm this down a little bit. Calm, cool, and collected. But I'm definitely going to adopt the dimwit mentality.
Yeah, man.
That's perfect. It's a good in the moment tool. Let's pivot gears real quick. Let's get a little bit more serious. Because we are a mental health podcast. So let's we talked briefly about vulnerability. The physical weight of leadership is real. And really, whether we want to admit it or not, the stigma around mental health in the first responder community, it's still there, right? We've been at an awareness level for so long. Hazmat's a good example. We have hazmat awareness, hazmat operations, hazmat tech, hazmat specialist. We haven't graduated from the awareness level of mental health yet. Mm-hmm. And it's time for us to start having real conversations about moving from an awareness level to an operations level, and then eventually a technician level. Like, so as a leader for you, vulnerability is a scary word. A lot of people hear vulnerability and they think that's a sign of weakness. How do you break that down for somebody who's like, what's the first step as a leader to get somebody underneath you or somebody on your team to be vulnerable with you and really truly sharing where they're at and where they're struggling?
So tools that help me they're sharing my experiences. And it's and that brings you into that, because I just learned that one of our officers was just diagnosed with PTSD, and you never would guess it, right? And it hurts because sometimes you see that from a stance of, did you get to that level because you didn't feel that you could reach out and just say, hey, JP, man, I'm going through some stuff. Can we just go for a car ride, meet at the office, whatever the case is? I'm fortunate enough to work in the same town that I live in. So, I'm not that far from the office. I'll come at 3:00 in the morning. But for me to break that vulnerability, it's just it's breaking that leadership persona of I can't talk to somebody because, that's the chief or whatever the case is. It's just showing people that I'm a person too, right? One of the things that people don't really realize about me is, and I didn't really realize myself because I was young enough as it was, but my grandmother committed suicide because she, couldn't handle the stresses of life. I did not realize how much it affected me as a child until my mom kind of walked me through it. And I was like, oh, that's why I was going to, to counseling or whatever it is. And it's sharing those experiences with people. People see the polished version of this. It's like a book. You look at the cover of the book, you read the story, you're like, oh my gosh, what an amazing life story this person has. But you don't see, you peel the layers of the onions back, and now you start to see those layers of, oh my God, that's the struggle they had to go through to get here. There is this that they feel, they fight with, or that they fight with. So for me, it really is. It's just being a peer with them, being a fellow brother or a sister, and just sitting with them and being like, listen, I can tell something's wearing on you a little deeper than it needs to be. I don't want, you don't need to tell me what's going on, but just know that I see you, type thing. And, sharing stories that I have. For me, a lot of it can be, post traumatic calls, whether it be car accidents or things like that. It's pulling the younger members, and even sometimes the older members too. Only robots can really handle the amount of trauma that we actually are exposed to. I will not throw stats out there, but we are certainly, because I don't remember them, but we are inclined to see hundreds more traumatic experiences in our lives than a regular civilian is. And that can be equated to the death of a family member or whatever. So they get a handful to maybe a dozen at the most. And depending upon where we work, we could see that in a single shift. It's letting the newer people know, hey, we are going to be exposed to some certain things. If this wears on you immediately, like let's just say there's dismemberment or something. I was not expecting in my life to ever see that. I get that things we are going to have to see, but here are some tools that we have at our disposal, and some clinicians or peer support group teams, whatever the case is. Or if you want to just go and sit down and have a couple of apps and some drinks at the local restaurant in town, let's go sit down and talk. Sometimes it's not even talking about the incident; it's just understanding that they have another shoulder to be on. And it's breaking that I am only your superior in the sense of a hierarchy during business. But when it comes time to basic human necessities, like somebody being there to be a shoulder to lean on, or an ear to bend, or a shoulder to cry on, then I'm there. Sometimes I wish I don't want to say a level of force, because some people just do a really good job at guarding. I'm the kind of person that's like, I can see it, and you kind of pick a little bit, but you can't pick too hard, because you know what I mean? So you just kind of have to, all right, well, here's some numbers. Here's my number. You know where I'm at if you need me. And you kind of just pray to the heavens or wherever, that you send help and hope for, that the person will take you up on your advice. And just being there for them. So it's literally just shared experiences. I talk a lot in presentations about keeping war stories to a minimum. This entire evening has been about war stories, but that really is how you kind of, again, you get people to see. I have people that reach out to me all the time, like, man, dude, you're really doing, this and this and this. Like they didn't see me fight underneath the worst fire chief the longest time. Somebody who, degraded everything that I did and, gave me every ridiculous chore. I lived more in the aspect of the other duties as assigned portion of my job description than I actually did in my job description. Nobody ever saw that, or how hard it was to fight through that for the better part of almost almost a decade, things change. And then it's just people don't see that. Age similar peers can understand that because they've lived experiences themselves. But it's the younger, like the between 15 and 19-year-olds that are like, oh, dude, like you've done so well. And it's like, yeah, you haven't seen the fact that I've been through a divorce. That in and of itself is a horrible experience. I've had to fight to be able to see my kids, multiple job rejections, which, I mean, I'm working on a book for that one. Not, and it was more of an outlet than it was anything. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, I had an actual book written. So my sixth grade teacher is actually working on editing it for me right now. The old phrase, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. I've been through more than a handful of fire chiefs' job interview processes, always been number 2, and only once have actually been selected as the chief. And I turned it down because it just wasn't a good fit for me. So there's so much more behind. And when you sit down and have those conversations with your peers, people can see that. It's like, this really is a human behind it. I think sometimes people just put too much value, I guess, in what they see at surface level. And it's like, no, let's peel some layers of this onion back, babe. And you'll be able to see, it's not how it works type thing.
And I want to ask you something that I think is very important. I think that many times, and I can tell you from my own experience, the scariest part of the whole job was not what I encountered. It was the quiet when I got home, and when I got to sit with it, when I didn't have anything to occupy my mind, or maybe the quiet car ride home where you're just reliving some of these things. So what does your quiet time look like after all your experience, about all the education, about everything that you know? What's your actual quiet time look like? Is it still a scary place, or have you conquered some of that and have ways that you can share that have been helpful for you?
Man, honestly, for me, and it's disgusting that I find it cathartic, but I come home and, it's the stupid, simple day-to-day house chores. I'll start a load of wash. I'll do the dishes, vacuum the floor, let the dog out so we can, go pee for the day or whatever. It's that the shed of the discontinuing of the day. And there are days where sometimes, especially I love music. So sometimes music can catch me off guard. Those are the days where it's a little bit tougher. It sneaks up on you. My old man passed March of 23, and there's still some days where you hear like that sappy "I wish you were here" type country song, and you're like, oh boy, I wonder what the hell he'd be doing right now if he was here. Or so it's those moments. I've taken the sorrow, I should say, and been able to turn it into a understanding that I need to value my time here. If my wife and I have an argument, it's an immediate try to fix that, because we're not guaranteed that tomorrow is going to be here. And again, it's cliche as all get out, and it's nauseating sometimes. One of the best analogies, a cemetery is it's a field full of people who thought that they had more time. And what helps me push through that is realizing, all right, I should place more value on my time forward and not spend what time that we know that we have left worrying about, time that's already been wasted and spent or lost or whatever the case is. Allow yourself to have those moments of sorrow. If I need to shed a few tears because I miss my old man, yeah, absolutely. I'll do it. I'll do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. It comes full circle. It's when anytime somebody passes, I'm like, man, I can't believe so-and-so is gone. And it's like, man, I thought we had more time. And it's like, well, what am I going to do now with what time I have left to make sure that it is the most valuable time for me, for my loved ones, for my friends, and everybody else that I can, influence in what time we have left. So I've been able to take that sort of sorrow, let it have its moment, because it does, our emotions do need to play themselves out. No matter what emotion you suppress, you're still suppressing emotions. But turning it into that positive of, okay, that sucks that so-and-so is gone. I prefer to not go out that way that they did. So let's one, try not to. And then two, let's make sure that we're enjoying the moment that we have and living in the moment. And we know what's really helped me a lot too is second marriage. I've married somebody who is 11, almost 12 years younger than I am. So she's got a lot more years in the working force than I do. Once I am ready to retire from the fire service, I'm not going to be that guy that sits in the fire service forever. I'll say it again here, but if I pass, if I'm an active firefighter when I die, I died early or something bad happened. It's good. That's it. I'm not going to be that dude who's 90 and can't, hang them up, because once I'm eligible for retirement, this cat is absolutely retirement bound. I'll
Same.
find something to do. I'm looking at adjunct professors because there's a ton of online schools, whether it be speaking engagements, continuing through the platform, whatever the case is. I'm very fortunate where Shawnee wants to go into the traveling nurse field. So I'm like, all right, babe, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to retire. I will pull the most baller camper you can find anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
I'll park it. And then you go do your traveling nurse gig. I'll be at the campground with the dogs. And then when you come home, dinner will be ready. And I may or may not have accomplished getting dressed that day. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Man,
I
I love
love that you say that, because you basically answered the question that I was going to kind of allude to. It's also ironic that you talk about dismemberment in one segment of the show and use that kind of an example, and then mention music. I'm not going to ruin any songs for anybody, so I won't mention the song, but that my very first time ever seeing a dismemberment, there was a particular song playing on the kids' radio that had this car accident. And I still, to this day, every time that song comes, I'm like, nope, change that. Do not want to remember that. Thank you. Move on. But that's ironic. But really the question, and you answered it within your segment there, was that I think it's so important for us to know who we are after this all ends, because inevitably, whether it's, and I don't know if you know this, JP, but and I brought this up in the last few shows, and I'm not asking for any well wishes or anything like that, but I had a medical issue just recently that took me kind of out of commission of everything. Like my life stopped 100 miles an hour to zero, just like that. And I think it was a big, and we've talked about it so many times on the show, I found myself going back to those episodes and thinking about some of the things that we've heard from guests and go, who are you without this? And I think you alluded to it. We're husbands, we're fathers. For me, I'm a devout Christian who assists in running a marriage ministry. I do all this other stuff. Like, I am not just, and I had to smile about it, because I'm not Kevin, the EMT or paramedic anymore, or manager or whatever, leader, whatever you want to be. At the end of the day, if all this is stripped away, we are what our passions are. So what are those passions? And really, I found myself thinking through that and going, hey, I think I'm in a really good place. I think I'm set. Like, all this could go away and it would be just fine. Like, I'm really being off work for the last, what is this, 2 months now? It's like, hey, this is actually pretty grand. I'm looking forward to retirement. This is not all that bad.
There is, his name's Joe. I love Joe. He's so funny. He retired from the FAA a few years ago, and he did the same. Like, as soon as he could retire, he was out, and he will show up for calls during the day at 2:00 in the afternoon. Hair is all over the place. No. And I'll jokingly be like, Joe, did you just wake up? And he's like, yep. He goes, he goes, what day is it even this, right now? And it's part joking, but I mean, I just actually saw him at the car wreck we just had, because he was supposed to be on vacation. I'm like, Joe, like, what happened? He goes, there was a 12% chance of rain at the campground, so we decided we'll just do it next week. I'm like, dude, this is great. Like, no, there's no retiree that we have within our rank and file that I'm like, you really make this look like a horrible proposition. There's nothing that makes this look absolutely atrocious. Yeah. And to the identity part, I think where it's scary in the fire service is, and I've seen it a lot, is I think the ones that sometimes won't hang it up are the ones that don't have anything other than what the fire service is.
That's exactly it.
And that's where the suicide rates climb in retirement.
Yes.
Because they don't have that identity out, and once that identity is gone, then they're, for lack of better terms, they're left with nothing.
It's scary, and it's really sad. And one thing to identity that, I'll tie it back to my rejection stuff really quick, that really hit me hard a lot. One of the rejections that I had was within my agency, and that was probably one of the harder pills for me to swallow, only because at that time I was one of 2 full-timers. Our then fire chief ended up finding himself in a situation where he involuntarily resigned. if people want to look up my name, and you can find my agency, but no names will be given. But I felt, I was in the best possible position to be the heir apparent, so to speak. So there was a little cocky swagger, so to speak. And throughout the time of our chief being on, suspension and whatever the case is, we had an interim chief, but it really boiled a lot down to that, all of the questions I needed, answers to, they were always coming to me to get the answer. So it was, yes, there was a figurehead in the interim role, but I was the one that was kind of feeding all the stuff. It really kind of felt like it was going to, work out. Organizational betrayal. It's a phrase that's used by a lot of different platforms. There's a book written by some folks about it. It is not my phrase, but I felt that in what it was. It took me a little bit to kind of come back. Did I feel that they got the wrong person? No. Our chief she's doing an amazing job. I'm glad she got the position over me, because this board of commissioners, I don't see eye to eye with them. We can tie it way back to the very beginning about them thinking that I'm talking poor leadership is about them. It's not. It's about, just characteristics in general. And if people see, if the reflection hurts, then polish the mirror, so to speak. But it boiled down to after a while, I'm like, man, like I felt like my identity, with all these rejections after a while, it's like, man, is it me? You start to question yourself. Am I not designed for the fire service? Am I really not where I need to be? Am I not as good of a leader as my mind's eye wants me to see? Whatever the case is. And it took a little bit of time. And really, it was time that actually fixed that, was to realize that each and every one of those, Kevin, kudos on you for being a devout Christian. I am more on the skeptical side, but I still also believe that everything does happen for a reason. So every single one of the opportunities that I thought I had missed, or I was, they messed up by not taking me, as time went by and I realized, oh my God, look at the butt ache that person had. Look at the, oh my God, that person never even lasted, because, and I'm like, that would be me. And so everything does happen for a reason. I am where I need to be. Does it mean that if, other positions happen to pop up that I'm not going to apply? No, because it's one of those things. And I have conviction in, where I feel that I want to go in my career. If I never make it to a fire chief's, like the fire chief position, and I, end up going the next 15 in my current, I'd be happier in a pig in a wet pasture, so to speak. It was that attack on my perceived internal identity. You start questioning yourself, like, Jesus, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to keep doing this? It was that. And then once I had that, it was almost the epiphany of, this is what you start seeing in a lot of the older volunteer members in the fire service, of the 75, 85, 95-year-old veterans that just don't give it up because they don't know anything other than that. Yeah. It's scary. It's very, very scary. And I hope that people can find what that identity is outside of the fire service. Because, I mean, as crazy as it is, once, when I'm cold and dead, there's going to be somebody else to fill in my position. I'm a firm believer in there's no such thing as leaving a legacy in the fire service. The only legacy you leave is with your family, and that's it. You leave nothing in the fire service. You are only as strong as, you might have left a lasting impression on members who were part of the department before you passed, but anybody that comes thereafter ain't going to know a damn thing about you. And there's nobody, even your actual brother or sister, like blood brother, could not keep your legacy alive if they wanted to. It only lives within your family. And that's so if there's anybody out there that, that really wants to push the legacy idea, a hill I will die on is that there is no such thing as the fire service legacy. It's only within your friends and family. That's it, period.
That's a good capstone right there. Like for me, I think I'm very passionate about fatherhood and the role dads play in their families, as husbands, as dads, as members in the community. And the reality is we're so much more, we're so much more than what we do. So similar to you, like that, I love the legacy in the fire service is not a thing. I don't know that I've ever heard that before, but I believe it in my core. Like everything you just said there, the reality is 2 generations from now, nobody's going to know who we were.
Oh, exactly.
You think back, if you think back 2 generations, like I barely knew my grandparents, right? Before they died.
Yeah, exactly.
So as 2 generations from now, we're going to be nothing but a name on a wall if we're lucky.
Yeah,
if we're lucky.
Yep.
if that. So the reality is, who's going to be there at the grave, or not the grave, but who's going to be there on your deathbed? It's not going to be your coworkers in the fire service.
Yeah.
It's going to be your family and the people that you really truly poured
Amen.
into.
They're the ones that are left. Yep.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are left. And to the leaders out there, I have to see, as I do this in our house, don't forget about the family that's left behind, because volunteers leave. We just had a call at 5:00 in the afternoon. That is prime time for families getting home, trying to get kids, showered and cleaned up from the day. Right now it's summer vacation time, but if it was during school vacation, it's one of those things. And you gotta bring the family full circle. You start bringing your family into the mix. That's because they are the ones that are left. And how much easier would it be if I had, I hate to use this phrase, but a nagging wife at home that's like, oh my God, you're leaving again for another dang fire. I'm not going to want to leave, because now it's like, okay, so I'm going to go enjoy myself with the crew. But then when I come back, you're going to have to hear it for hours. But if on the converse side, if they know that the fire service leadership appreciates their time given and lost, I should say, sacrificed, then it's totally different. Hey, be safe, come back, in whatever the case is. And honestly, what does it cost? A pack of thank you cards, a handwritten note, and a postage stamp. Toss it in the mail. Thank you for, giving, your husband, son, wife, mother, whatever to us, or coughing up that time. And it, it doesn't have to be done every damn call, randomly. Pick somebody randomly from your roster, write a longer heartfelt letter, send it in the mail, be done with it. And people, it goes a long way. As dumb as it sounds, a little gratitude just goes a long way.
It does, and that speaks to that genuineness and that authenticity that we talked about earlier. So hey, as we wrap up, I always like to ask one last question, and this is, what questions do you have for us?
I love that.
Ooh, I think I've ever done this. Hang on, let me write that down for future episode. No. So what was the driving? And Kevin's going to get this again in a little bit, but what was the driving force behind the movement to start the platform?
I had a very difficult call in 2017 that I did not handle well. I speak about it at public events now, and I buried that down. I never dealt with it, just did what we all do and just pushed it down and went on to the next thing, right? I did have the wherewithal when the call happened to call my wife and go, hey, I'm not okay. I need you to come get me. I can't be here. Like, this is bad. It was a pediatric drowning. And like you mentioned before, it was not necessarily about what had happened to that child. It was about his hair reminded me of my daughter's, the smell of the chlorine that she's in every summer, like all those things just kind of stacked up, and did not have a good outcome either. So I was just like, did I do everything right? So I felt some of that guilt, but I stuffed it down. I pretended to take a few days off, and it was really just my time to be off anyway, those 4 days in between, because we did a 48-96. Stuffed it down. And then in 2021, I had a pretty explosive episode over a silly little fight with my wife. And it was more of a heated discussion, and was beating my shit outside my house up. And they had never seen me that way. They actually left. She loaded the kids up and left. And I sat there on my back porch thinking, what is wrong with me? And when she came back, that's the moment that I started, because she told me, she's like, you've got a problem. I've never seen you like this. I don't know what it's about. And I didn't break down right then, but she encouraged me to find some professional help, which was a big blow to my ego, right? I didn't never think I was going to be the guy that needed help.
Right.
So go to find help. And once we got into therapy and some EMDR sessions and things like that, I discovered that I had packed a lot of stuff down that I had never dealt with throughout my career, throughout my childhood, throughout my teenage years. And just unpacking all that, I felt really alone. I felt really isolated. I felt like I was the only one with these problems. And after working on it for, let's say we started in 2025. So I worked on it for 4 years, with a counselor. And after telling her some of those things, I wound up doing our organization that I work for has got a very small podcast that goes out to, the hospital staff that that I work in. And I did an interview talking about my position and what our team does and things like that. And somebody said, "Hey, you gave some great insight. You should think about starting a podcast." And when somebody said it, I was like, you know what? I really do have a lot of experience and things to give. And I don't want anybody to feel isolated and alone when they're going through this. So it's going to be mental health.
Yeah.
And just jumped in because I didn't want any of my fellow first responders or healthcare folks to feel like they were all by themselves. So this became kind of a safe place to land and have conversations about what people have dealt with. And we've been blessed to have some of the largest creators in that kind of community of first responders in healthcare offer to come on our show and say yes when we reach out. And it's been just an amazing journey.
That's so cool.
And I'll add that, like, I've only been with the team here for maybe a month or so. It's been a very cathartic healing process just to be parts of these conversations. Like we step into these conversations thinking we're there for other people, and we are. And in that vulnerability and in that conversation, I find healing for myself.
That's
absolutely. I tell my therapist that all the time. I was like, this is so cathartic for me, and I didn't realize it was going to be that.
Yeah. It's a crazy how, I'm not sure if it is for you guys, but like when I record, it's energizing. It's literally
absolutely.
like getting on a truck with a brand new firefighter who just wants to grab an axe and break glass.
Ready to go.
And and it's the downside is, being all virtual. It's when you have guests who are in, so I'm East Coast time frame or time zone. My gosh, it's been a long day. And I've had some West Coast guests on. And I remember one, and I'm all about family first. So we had him on. His name is Mike L. He does front seat leadership. And he goes, can we do 8 o'clock my time? That's when the kids go to bed. I'm like, you know what, dude? Absolutely. Because I'm all about, I split time with, Kevin just did the math. I can see it right now. So
yeah, because I do this. I've been there.
So guys, I'm all for, put your kids to bed. I split time with my ex, so I do every other weekend and then every other week throughout the summer. So I'm like, yeah, man, get the boys to bed, blah blah blah. And of course, I'm like 8 o'clock his time. Then I did the same thing he did. I schedule it, and I'm like, jeez, that's 11. So we did an hour and a half long podcast. Yeah. And it's like 12:30, 1 a.m. and I am jacked up like a Coke addict that just did a shot of Mountain Dew. And I'm literally laying in bed hovering. So Shawnee goes, she rolls over from a dead sleep and she goes, "Good episode, huh?" And I'm like, "Is it really that noticeable?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, so I'm going to go to the living room for a little bit and see if I can't sit this off for a bit."
Chill out.
Oh yeah, but because it's just so fun. These conversations are great. Like and it's sharing other people's stories, and when you realize I've heard it on a ton of different platforms. When you get outside of the 4 walls of your own firehouse, you really realize that there are no 4 walls in the fire service. And I didn't really ever realize what the hell that meant until I started talking with guests as it was myself, and I'm like, yup, that person that they're talking about is this person on my agents. That's this, and you start cross-referencing, and you're like, oh, and it is almost eerily to the we talk about a fire. Some guy was talking about a firefighter who, the kid put his helmet in his oven at the house to kind of give it a little bit more salt, and anytime that they're at the fire scene, he'd always rub his dirty gloves on his face to kind of give him that smudge look. And as soon
I'm
as
literally picking out the guy I know in my department that did the same thing.
Dude, for real. So as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to enter the name because he's no longer with us, on our department, but I'm like, that's so-and-so. And I'm like, it's mind blowing how literally identical it is. It's so crazy. Same circus, different monkeys, or not my circus, not my monkeys.
Well, JP, this has been an absolutely awesome conversation episode. We've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, I talk to you all day.
As Jason mentioned, it's always like cathartic for me, especially being in a leadership position, to interview somebody like you who kind of gets it and pours into me at the same time, whether you realize you're doing it or not. Many of Many of your videos do the same thing, but
I
I
appreciate
always
it.
want to give everybody the opportunity that comes on our show. Tell us where we can find you and all the things that is the Passionate Leader.
Sure. So I have a couple of shameless plugs. For the Passionate Leader, we can be found on podcast wise on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If you really like to see my ugly face, then YouTube. Everything else is all going to be audio. I recommend the latter. But so we're TikTok, the Passionate Leader, Instagram, the Passionate Leader, and Facebook, the Passionate Leader. If you want to reach out to get on the show, share a story, JP at the Passionate Leader is my email address. I also believe in the strength of brotherhood. If anybody ever needs to reach out because they're having a bad day, they need, hey, this chief just told me this and your story about, being a peon lieutenant really resonated. Hit me up, shoot me a text, 603-554-7653. I do cordially ask you that if it's not necessarily life-threatening, 3 a.m. probably can wait until at least 7 or 8. But if it is life-threatening, my phone is literally right next to my head on my side of the bed. The other shameless plug, while I do have a couple of seconds, is myself and a few firefighters have started what's known as the First Do Project. It's a small, I guess we can call it a company technically because it's an LLC, but it's a small group of firefighters that are putting together a fire conference here in the New England area that's going to be launching with the intent to start a scholarship fund to help offset the cost of training. Because let's be real, training really is expensive. This came... Yes, my brainchild. It was, I put to speak at conferences. Again, I've been through rejection. Let it rip. I'm all for it. It helps me refine and realize where I'm not doing the greatest at putting presentation submissions in. But where it really gets me and kind of grinds my gears a little bit is when you always get the same. You start looking at Instagrams and it's like, oh my God, so glad to be coming back to insert the 4-letter conference for the 12th year in a row, and you're like, 12 years in a row, you can't find out of the hundreds of participants. So, it was, again, probably a late night after a podcast. I'm laying in bed and I'm like, the hell with it. Let's do our own damn conference. So Shawnee's like, you think so? I'm like, I don't know. So we met up with Shawnee and another, because she's in the fire department with me, one of our lieutenants and a few other, spouses and people. We've formed together the First Do Project, and we're launching our first our first conference, rather, the Fire and Foliage Symposium. So you can find us at thefirstdoproject.org to get your tickets. But all proceeds that go from this are to help offset and start a scholarship fund so that, if departments need to send somebody for firefighter 1 and they can't afford it, maybe we can help offset that cost. If somebody wants to bring you guys in for a speaking engagement and they want to help offset your travel expenses, which, again, is only the rightful thing to do. Because what I'm really seeing that people need this are your small town departments that barely have enough money in their operating budget to keep the lights on, let alone send guys to training. And those are the ones who are the hungriest and who are starving because they can't get the bread on the table, so to speak. So those are my 2 shameless plugs. So hit up the Passionate Leader on all socials and Fire and Foliage across both Instagram and Facebook right now. That is our conference. It's happening October 16th and 17th in Nashua, New Hampshire this year. That's my shameless plugs.
Very cool. Very cool. I will be in Maine, New Hampshire area the week before that.
Go figure. Okay. Yep.
Michaela lives in Maine now. So we're going up to visit her. She's family to us. So we're heading to Maine. I've never been up to that side of the country. So
it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's what they say. Pretty excited and apparently a good time to go. But for everybody listening to us, you can find us on all the socials, same way. If you want links to all that and kind of a direct place to go, you can go to our website, asilentwarwithin.com. That has everything that you need on it. You can also stream our episodes from there, but we stream on Spotify, Apple, a few other platforms, and of course, YouTube. But the biggest announcement this week that I really wanted to hit on is we have partnered with Dark Horse Press here in Mississippi. They are a media company with over 98,000 followers locally here in Tennessee, Mississippi area. And I have begun to write a section for them. So pretty exciting. Go check them out since they are our newest partners. We've also partnered with PTSDstrong.org. So you can check out, that's Cody Meacham. If you guys remember, he was on our podcast very early on in the release of his book, but we partner with them and they're sending us some pretty awesome merch and stuff to wear on the podcast. So go check them out. They're partners as well with us. They believe in our mission, which is always to make you feel like you're not alone and that you have a safe place to come and talk about it. If you ever need any of us, you can always reach out. You can find all of our contact information on the actual website, again, asilentwarwithin.com. But for us, that's a wrap. I think this was an awesome episode. I appreciate JP coming on.
Absolutely.
And Jason, again, thank you for joining our team. You have been amazing. We're so happy that you're here. And as Michaela always says in her 1-900 voice that I always pick on her about, be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon. Bye, everybody. The war isn't fought in the flashing lights or the chaos of the call. It's fought in the quiet after the rig is backed in and the boots are off and the noise dies down. If today's conversation hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Share the episode with a brother or sister on your shift who needs to hear they aren't fighting alone. Take 10 seconds right now, rate, review, and leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening on. Every review, every comment, and every share helps us break through the silence that we are fighting against and help those providers who are bleeding out in the dark. We read every single message and we'd love to interact with you. None of this happens in a vacuum. A massive thank you to our incredible team here at A Silent War Within. They work tirelessly to make sure this platform stays standing. And a special, non-negotiable thank you to our founding sponsor, 5 Arrows Forge. Without the belief and backing of 5 Arrows Forge, this show simply would not exist. Founded by firefighter, author, and NLP master coach, Jason Minershagen, 5 Arrows Forge is bringing real, operational level mental health readiness to first responders, men, and fathers. They take mindset coaching out of the classroom and put it right where it belongs, the home front. If you are ready to break repeating cycles, shift limiting beliefs, and lead your family with conviction, go visit them right now at 5arrowsforge.com. If you're struggling and you need real vetted resources, or if you just need a safe place to land, go to our hub, asilentwarwithin.com. Everything we do, every resource we've gathered is right there waiting for you. Remember, the war in your own head stops the moment you stop fighting it alone.